Have you ever walked into your own child's home and felt like a stranger? Not out of hostility, just absence. Like you were there, but not really seen, not welcomed, not valued. You brought dessert, played with the grandkids, smiled through dinner, and still something inside whispered, "I no longer belong here." This isn't just a moment. For many people navigating life after 70, it becomes a quiet reality. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes family relationships start to fade. Not because love disappears, but because respect for seniors quietly erodes. The calls stop, the warmth cools. The visits feel more like routine than reunion. But what if I told you, this isn't the end of your story? What if the greatest strength of elderly wisdom isn't just enduring these changes, but knowing when to stop showing up where you're no longer respected? In this video, we're going to talk, heart to heart, about the power of choosing peace over obligation, of honoring your presence instead of begging for attention. We'll explore what healthy aging truly means, not just in terms of senior health, but in reclaiming your emotional well-being, your dignity, and your joy. Because you are not here to fade quietly into the background. You are here to live fully with grace, with pride, with the kind of self-respect that teaches others how to love you properly. So if you've ever felt invisible in the places that should feel most like home, stay with me. This isn't about giving up on family. It's about standing up for yourself, because elderly wisdom knows being loved is beautiful, but being seen, that's sacred. 1. When presence feels like absence. You walk through the door just like every Sunday, carrying that same familiar dessert, the one they used to ask for. You smile, take off your coat, and wait for someone to notice. But no one really does. The kids are busy with their devices. Your daughter's in the kitchen talking on the phone. The son-in-law gives a distracted nod before going back to the game. You stand there, still holding the dessert, still holding on to the hope that this time will feel different. This quiet kind of sadness is something we don't often talk about. It's not loud, it doesn't make headlines, but it lingers. It weighs heavy in the silence between forced smiles and half-hearted conversations. This is what elderly wisdom eventually teaches us. That love doesn't always disappear all at once. Sometimes it just fades, quietly, slowly, until all that's left is routine, and you wonder, when did I become a guest in the lives I helped build? You try not to let it show. You sit in the same corner of the couch. You offer to help clean up. You laugh at stories you've already heard, but inside, deep down, you feel it. You're no longer part of the center. You're orbiting your own family, present, but not really seen. And what hurts most is not the lack of words, it's the lack of warmth. They still invite you over. They still answer your calls, but something essential is missing. The effort, the glow in their voice when they see you, the way they used to light up just because you walked in the room. Now, it's all become polite. And that hurts more than anyone knows. You go home and maybe, like so many others, you cry quietly. Not because they were cruel, but because you didn't feel like you mattered. And then comes the question that breaks your own heart. Is it me? Am I asking for too much? No. You're asking for something human, something sacred, to be noticed, to be heard, to be respected. And if those things are no longer offered freely, if love has turned into habit and connection into obligation, then something is wrong. Not with you, but with the space you keep walking into. This isn't about drama. This isn't about being sensitive. This is about senior respect. This is about recognizing that in life after 70, your emotional well-being matters just as much as your physical senior health. You've spent decades giving. You've raised children, carried burdens, kept peace. You've been strong, flexible, patient, sometimes too patient. And now, in this quieter season, you deserve to receive what you so freely gave. Attention, warmth, effort, presence. Healthy. Aging isn't just about heart rates and steps walked. It's about how you feel in the spaces you enter. It's about the value people place on your presence, not just your help. The truth is, Family relationships evolve. Children grow into busy adults. Priorities shift. But that doesn't mean your place disappears, and it definitely doesn't mean you should feel like a burden in your own bloodline. So if you've ever walked into a room and felt like the furniture, seen but not acknowledged, if you've ever left a visit feeling more alone than when you arrived, you're not being dramatic, you're being honest. And elderly wisdom gives you the permission that so few others will. You are allowed to want more than presence. You are allowed to need more than habit. You are allowed to feel deeply what others pretend not to notice. Because at this stage in life, you shouldn't be questioning your worth. You should be surrounded by people who confirm it every time you walk in the door. Family isn't the same as respect. They say blood is thicker than water. That family comes first. That love means showing up, no matter what. But what happens when you do show up and still feel like you're not welcome? You sit at the dinner table. You smile, you listen. You offer help again, you bring the same kind of warmth you always have. But now it feels like they expect it, not appreciate it. They nod, distracted. They thank you, but their eyes are already on their phones. They make space on the couch, but not in their hearts. And that's when something shifts inside you, something quiet but undeniable. Love, without respect, begins to feel like erasure. Let's be honest. Family relationships can be the most beautiful parts of life, and also the most painful, because when respect fades, love becomes an obligation, a performance, a habit, not a connection. Elderly wisdom teaches us something no greeting card ever will. That being related to someone does not give them the right to overlook you. That shared blood does not excuse consistent indifference. That closeness without care is not love, it's captivity. Respect is not about big gestures. It's about effort. It's about listening when you speak. It's about showing that your presence matters, not just accepting it out of guilt. When your child speaks over you, rolls their eyes, or dismisses your advice, that's not just how they are. That's disrespect. And when it happens again and again and you stay silent, that's not peacekeeping, that's self-abandonment. For many of us who've reached this chapter of life, we were taught to be patient, to endure, to forgive, even when we were hurting. But healthy aging isn't about tolerating emotional wounds with a quiet smile. It's about honoring your own heart. And senior health isn't just about blood pressure or mobility. It's about emotional oxygen. About surrounding yourself with people who lift your spirit, not drain it. Let me say this clearly. You are not selfish for wanting kindness. You are not dramatic for needing effort. You are not weak for stepping back when the room no longer feels safe. And no, wanting to be treated with dignity by your own children is not too much to ask. If someone else treated you the way your family sometimes does, would you allow it? Would you call it love? If the answer is no, then why is it acceptable just because it's family? Elderly wisdom reminds us, respect isn't guaranteed by genetics. It's earned through behavior. And yes, it should go both ways. You've spent a lifetime showing up, providing, supporting, sacrificing. Now at this stage, all you ask is to be seen, to be spoken to with care, to not be treated like a chore. That is not unreasonable. That is basic human decency. If someone talks about you like a burden, if they roll their eyes when you ask a question, if they make you feel like your presence is in the way instead of a joy, that is not family. That is a transaction. And you were never meant to be a transaction. You were meant to be treasured. So what do you do when respect is missing but the bloodline remains? You step back, not in bitterness but in wisdom. You don't slam the door. You don't throw accusations. You simply stop pouring yourself into cups that never fill yours in return. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's elderly wisdom choosing peace over pain. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your time, energy, or heart. Not even your children. If being in their presence makes you feel smaller, then maybe being in your own presence is where you need to return, because respect starts with you, with how you allow others to treat you, with what you refuse to excuse, no matter who it comes from. So let them call you distant. Let them say, "You've changed. You have changed. You've remembered who you are. You've stopped mistaking tolerance for love." And that is the beginning of freedom. 3. Stepping back. isn't bitterness, it's peace. There comes a time in life when you stop explaining your hurt and start protecting your peace. You've tried. You really have. You showed up every weekend. You forgave the cold tone, the distracted team, glanced the unanswered messages. You kept bringing the cake, kept asking how they were, kept pretending everything was okay. But one day, something inside you whispers, "What if I stop?" Not out of anger, not to punish, just to rest, to breathe, to let go of what no longer gives back. This is where elderly wisdom shows its strength, not in pushing harder, but in knowing when to pause. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to make a scene. You just quietly reclaim your time. No more showing up to be tolerated. No more trying to earn affection that should have been offered freely, because when love becomes a performance, when connection turns into obligation, it begins to cost you something deeper, your self-worth. You may hear things like, "But they're your kids." Family is family. You shouldn't give up. But let's be clear. Stepping back doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing your peace over your pain. It means understanding that family relationships are supposed to feel like safety, not sacrifice. And when the people closest to you consistently take more than they give, that's not love. That's a warning sign. We've all been taught to be the good parent, the understanding elder, the one who never complains. But healthy aging doesn't mean staying silent while your heart breaks. It means learning how to draw boundaries with grace. It means understanding that senior respect starts with self-respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to step away. Think about this. If you keep knocking on a closed door, eventually your hand gets tired. Eventually, your heart grows weary. Eventually, you start to forget what it feels like to be welcomed, and that's when elderly wisdom steps in and says, there are other doors, warmer ones, quieter ones, ones where you don't have to knock at all. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting yourself free from expectations that hurt. You don't have to answer every call. You don't have to chase down conversations. You don't have to keep filling spaces that don't fill you. If your love goes unnoticed, if your absence makes no difference, that's not rejection. That's revelation. Some will say you've changed. Let them. Some will ask why you stopped visiting. Let them wonder. Some may never notice you stepped away at all. And yes, that will hurt. But even that hurt is a kind of healing, because it tells you what you needed to know all along. If your presence was never cherished, then your distance was always necessary. Senior health isn't just about medication and walking speed. It's about peace of mind. It's about waking up without a knot in your chest. It's about being around people who refill your spirit, not drain it. You've spent a lifetime giving. Now it's your turn to receive. And if they can't give, that's okay. You can give it to yourself. A quiet afternoon, a book you love, a walk without needing permission, a cup of tea that's just for you. These aren't small things, they're sacred. Let this be the season you stop asking for love and start allowing it to find you in new places, in new faces, in simple, meaningful moments. Let this be the chapter where you stop explaining your absence. Because your presence was never truly seen, let this be the turning point where you stop trying to fit in and start remembering that you never needed to. You were never meant to blend into the background. You were meant to be cherished. Elderly wisdom says this: your value doesn't decrease when others stop appreciating it. It becomes more precious. You are not selfish. You are not cold. You are not too sensitive. You are wise enough to know that silence can speak louder than words. And sometimes peace feels like distance. So if you've reached that point where showing up hurts more than staying home, then listen closely. You're not giving up on them. You're giving yourself back to you, and that, more than anything else, is where true healing begins. 4. You don't need to be chosen. Choose yourself. There comes a moment, quiet and unannounced, when you realize you've been waiting far too long, waiting for someone to see you again, the way they used to. Waiting to be remembered, not just because it's a holiday or a birthday, but because you matter still. You sit by the phone, not because you're desperate, but because you still carry the hope that someone out there might remember how much you've given, how many pieces of yourself you've left in others' lives. You tell yourself they're busy, distracted, overwhelmed, and maybe they are. But deep down, a part of you wonders, if I stopped calling, would anyone notice I was gone? Elderly wisdom, the kind you earn through years of showing up, sacrificing, softening, teaches you something no one else will say out loud. That sometimes the love you keep chasing has already stopped looking back. And in that realization, you're faced with a quiet choice. You can keep waiting to be chosen, or you can choose yourself. Choosing yourself isn't loud. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't mean you love them any less. It means you finally love yourself enough to stop knocking on doors that only open out of guilt. It means you're no longer willing to settle for being tolerated when you were made to be treasured. It means stepping away from the rooms where your presence is expected, but your voice goes unheard. And no, that's not selfish. That's healing. That's healthy aging at its most honest. Not just about steps walked or vitamins taken, but about emotional peace, about reclaiming your joy from the places that forgot how to hold it. You've spent your life choosing others. You chose your children, your spouse, your siblings, again and again. You stayed up late, you showed up early, you remembered every date, every need, every unspoken thing. But somewhere along the way, while you were choosing them, you stopped choosing yourself. You forgot what it felt like to be full, to be lit up from within, not because someone validated you, but because you remembered your own worth without their permission. Now is the time to return to that, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in quiet reverence for the years you have left and how you want to live them. You don't need another unanswered message to tell you where you stand. Silence has already spoken. You don't need to explain why you stepped back. Your piece is explanation enough. Family relationships, no matter how deep, do not give anyone the right to keep you small. Senior respect is not about titles or duty. It's about effort. It's about someone lighting up when you enter the room, not sighing with obligation. It's about someone asking how you're doing and actually listening. And if that effort is gone, if the warmth is gone, if love has become nothing more than a routine, they haven't chosen you in a long time. But that doesn't mean you stop choosing joy. You stop choosing sunlight. You stop choosing laughter. It means now you choose differently. You choose the quiet that doesn't hurt, the coffee that doesn't come with tension, the walk that doesn't end in disappointment. You choose your garden, your books, your music, your peace. You choose the friend who checks in, not out of duty, but out of care. The stranger who becomes a companion. The activity that makes your soul rise even if no one claps for it. These moments aren't second best. They are sacred. This is elderly, wisdom in motion, no longer measuring your worth by who still calls, who still visits, who still remembers, but by how deeply you remember yourself. And maybe, just maybe, when you stop chasing love that ignores you, you begin to attract love that finds you. Gently, quietly, without force. And if they come around one day, let it be because they missed. Your presence, not your service. If they ask why you're distant, let your calm be the answer. If they don't ask at all, let that silence affirm the truth you were too kind to admit, that your absence simply revealed what your presence was masking all along. You don't need to be chosen by those who've stopped seeing you. Because the moment you choose yourself, you've already been chosen by the one person who stayed with you through it all, you. And that's not a loss. That's the beginning. 5. Your absence is the answer. There's something no one tells you about stepping away, about finally choosing distance over disappointment. They don't tell you that silence can be louder than any speech, that a chair left empty by choice can echo longer than 1,000 explanations. But it's true. Sometimes when words have failed, when conversations repeat themselves like a broken record, when your presence has been taken for granted too many times, the only thing left to say is nothing at all. And so you stop showing up, gently, quietly, without a goodbye, without a dramatic exit. You simply stop offering what was never valued. You let the visits go unplanned. You let the phone rest. You let the invitation remain unwritten. And in that pause, in that sacred stillness, you begin to learn something powerful. If they don't notice your absence, they never truly appreciated your presence. That truth, it stings. It sits heavy in the chest. because you wanted to be missed. You wanted someone to reach out, to wonder where you went, to feel the loss of your warmth. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they carry on, business as usual, and that quiet continuation says more than any rejection ever could. God says you were background noise. It says you were convenient, not cherished. And as painful as that truth is, it's also the answer you've been looking for. Elderly wisdom doesn't just teach patience, it teaches discernment. The ability to recognize when you've been giving too much of your energy to people who treat it like air, needed but invisible. And when you finally step back and they don't follow, that's not abandonment, that's clarity. This is the season of your life when clarity matters more than comfort, when honesty matters more than habit, when how you feel matters more than how others see you. Healthy aging is not just about what your body can still do, it's about what your spirit will no longer tolerate. It's about standing in front of the mirror and saying, I will not spend the rest of my days begging for affection that should flow freely. Your absence becomes your answer, not because you've given up, but because you've grown. Because you've realized that love without effort isn't love, it's convenience. Because you've stopped measuring your worth by who still calls and started measuring it by how deeply you choose to live. Because you've learned that peace is not found in being needed, it's found in being whole. Let them wonder. Let them feel the emptiness where your laughter used to be. Let them notice that the house feels colder without your warmth. Or maybe, let them not notice at all. Either way, you win. Because you've stopped chasing. You've stopped proving. You've stopped performing. This is elderly wisdom at its most fearless, not needing to be center stage but refusing to be hidden in the wings, not begging for inclusion but reclaiming your own rhythm, not asking to be chosen but embracing the freedom of choosing yourself. And in this quiet, something beautiful begins to grow. You start to find yourself again in the simplest places, in the still morning light, in the sound of your favorite song, in a walk where no one rushes you, in a hobby you forgot you loved. You realize your life isn't smaller without them. It's just quieter. And that quiet becomes sacred. That space becomes healing. That solitude becomes strength. Because what you've always needed, what we all need, isn't just to be surrounded by people. It's to be seen, to be valued, to be respected. And if that can't be found in the places you used to call home, then maybe it's time to build a new kind of home. One rooted in truth, not nostalgia. Family relationships may begin with blood, but they survive on care. And when care disappears, what remains is a choice. Cling to what hurts or rise into what heals. So today, let your absence speak. Let it say what words never could. Let it carry your quiet answer to anyone who took your presence for granted. I mattered. Even if you didn't see it, I mattered. And now I matter to myself. That is not loss, that is liberation. That is the wisdom only time can offer. That is the beginning of peace. 6. You are not a guest in their life. You are the host of yours. For too long you've lived like a guest in lives you helped create. Quiet, polite, careful not to disturb, careful not to ask for too much. You wait for their invitation. You adjust to their schedule. You shrink so they feel comfortable. You sit in their homes, smile in their presence, and leave before your heart truly settles in. But the truth is, you were never meant to be a visitor in their world. You were never meant to ask for permission to exist. You are not a guest in their life. You are the host of your own. Elderly wisdom whispers this when the world grows too loud. This life is yours. This time is yours. These years, these days, these mornings, you still wake up with breath in your lungs. They belong to you. Not to your children, not to your family's expectations, not to people who only reach for you when they need something. They are yours, and it's time to start living that way. No more arranging your joy around someone else's availability. No more holding your phone like a lifeline, waiting for a message that never comes. No more sitting by the window wondering if today is the day they remember what you mean to them. You remember now. And that's enough. Because healthy aging is not just about preserving your body, it's about protecting your spirit. It's about removing yourself from spaces that make you feel like you're too much, too needy, too inconvenient. It's about building a life that doesn't revolve around waiting rooms, emotional or otherwise. It's about waking up and saying, "This is my house, this is my story. I choose what gets written next." And what does that look like? It looks like mornings that begin with gratitude instead of grief. Walks taken not to escape, but to feel the breeze. It looks like picking up that hobby you set aside for everyone else's needs. Reading the book you never finished, planting flowers, not for anyone to admire, but because you love how they bloom. It's making tea in silence and realizing that silence isn't empty, it's peaceful. Family relationships may not be what they once were. Some people may never understand why you pulled back. They'll say you've changed, and you have. You've grown into someone who no longer begs for crumbs of affection, someone who doesn't need to be needed to feel valuable, someone who no longer defines their worth by how often they're included, but by how fully they include themselves in their own life. And if they never reach out again, you'll be okay. Because what you've built, this sanctuary of peace, of truth, of emotional safety, is more real than any forced holiday dinner or half-hearted conversation. You've learned that senior respect begins the moment you stop accepting anything less. This is your new home now, not made of bricks and walls, but of boundaries and grace. You don't have to knock, you don't have to wait. You don't need an invitation to belong to your own life. You are the host, and you get to decide who walks through the door. You get to choose what energy stays. You get to say yes to what fills you and no to what drains you. And in that decision, you don't lose love. You find it. Because sometimes the deepest love isn't in giving endlessly to others. It's in finally giving something back to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, the ones who once overlooked you will look up and find your chair empty. Maybe they'll miss the steadiness, the warmth, the way you always made the room feel softer. Maybe they'll finally understand what they had when you stopped being the one who always showed up. But by then, you'll be elsewhere. Not angry, not bitter, just free. Living a life that no longer asks for permission, one filled with small joys and quiet dignity, one where your worth is never questioned because it's never up for negotiation again. This is what elderly wisdom knows. Better than anything, you are not here to fade quietly. You are here to shine, in your own time, in your own space, on your own terms. So step into that space. Take up room in your own story. Let the silence grow into strength. Let the stillness become sacred. You are not waiting anymore. You are living, fully, freely, finally. As we grow older, life teaches us a quieter, deeper kind of wisdom, one not found in books but earned through experience, heartbreak, and healing. This is the essence of elderly wisdom, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. If you've found yourself constantly reaching out, always being the one to initiate, to visit, to ask, to care, take a moment and ask, is this being returned? One of the most powerful acts of healthy aging is learning to protect your peace. You are no longer obligated to keep showing up in places that make you feel invisible. Let go of the guilt. Choosing distance is not bitterness. It's self-respect. Family. Relationships can be complicated, but love without senior respect is not love, it's routine. If your presence feels like a burden, not a blessing, it may be time to lovingly step back. Don't be afraid to say no to obligations that drain you. Instead, say yes to things that bring you joy. A morning walk, a book you love, a quiet tea, by the window. Let your world become smaller if it means it becomes warmer. Prioritize your senior health, not just through physical care, but emotional boundaries. Silence your phone if waiting for a call only brings you pain. Skip the gathering if it leaves you hollow. You don't have to explain your peace to anyone. The right people will understand. The wrong ones never really tried. Most importantly, remember this. You are not a guest in other people's lives. You are the host of your own. Fill your home, your mind, your heart with people and moments that honor you. Elderly wisdom says, we do not age to fade. We age to become more fully ourselves. So live not in waiting but in choosing, not in longing but in belonging to yourself. Because in the end, the love you seek most deeply begins within.